Boxing King Media in association with Box Raw. With me on Zoom today on Monday afternoon, Oliver Spencer. Great to see you. How are you first?
Raz, I'm absolutely brilliant, mate. All the better for seeing you as well. I love doing interviews with you, mate. One of my favourites, if not the favourite. There you go. I'm putting it out there. The favourite.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Spence, I just want to jump straight into it. On Saturday night, we saw an absolute magnificent performance. It was a throwback performance that everyone keeps saying. Terence Crawford dethroning Errol Spence Jr. and becoming the undisputed welterweight champion. I know you were in the TalkSport studios all night long, but wow, what a performance.
Absolutely. Listen, it was an incredible performance, effortless performance from Terence Crawford. You know, it was one of those fights that we was going into. It was one of the best fights of our modern era, actually. You know, the number one, number two, not just of the welterweight division, but possibly in the world, putting it on the line, both undefeated. And yeah, what a performance he put in there. It was incredible. I mean, there was a real divide going into that fight on who was going to win. You know, Errol Spence was naturally the bigger of the two. Terence Crawford had organically got to welterweight, you know, freeweight world champion. And there was a question mark over would Terence Crawford be big enough for Errol Spence? Would Errol Spence be too big for him, etc.? All of that sort of stuff. Or would the boxing IQ and the boxing finesse of Terence Crawford win? Well, look, the way he put in that performance, mate, it was dominant from the opening bell. First round was quite close, quite cagey from Crawford, and Errol Spence was doing what we knew he was going to do, was trying to push the pace, set the pace, and try and use his strengths to overpower Crawford. But Crawford got into a rhythm, man, from round two. He had Errol Spence down, and that was sort of like the beginning of the end. I think the big turning point for me was round four, when you see then, you know, it was only a matter of time, because Crawford had worked him out. He boxes equally as well out of the orthodox stance as he does the southpaw stance. But he put in a punch-perfect performance. That will go down in history, man. It's like he's got to go down in history as one of the greatest fighters, not just of this modern era. I think he'll go down in history as one of the greatest fighters ever. And that's where I see it. I mean, he made an unbelievable fighter look very average the other night. And that takes some doing.
Absolutely. Errol Spence, everyone knows he's an absolute great fighter. You just quoted there as him being an unbelievable fighter. Why do you think he struggled to navigate the jab of Terence Crawford? It seemed like everything was coming off Terence's jab.
It's what Terence was doing that he couldn't get around. And it's funny because, you know, when you speak to the likes of people like Amir Khan, they say, like, listen, this guy is just like, you know, two moves ahead of whatever you try and do. And that's pretty much what he done. Like I say, it was effortless. Like, so he couldn't get into any sort of rhythm. He tried to pressure Crawford, but Crawford sort of worked it out. And what he does is he controls the space so well, you know, and that's exactly what he does. And when he's got control of that space, his timing was punch perfect, his shot selections. And yeah, I just don't think that Errol Spence could bring anything to the table. Whatever he tried, and he did try, to be fair, he tried to put it on him and whatnot. But like I say, Crawford was just too cool, man, too calm, and just dominated in every single area. And when a fighter is like that, like, so if you're sparring a guy and the guy's much better than you, there's nothing you can actually do to change things around. And that become evident, like I say, right from the beginning of the contest, you know. And it was just, that was a brilliant performance. You know, it was probably a career best performance, if I'm totally honest, from Crawford in my eyes. I know he's a phenomenal fighter, but that was what we watched the other night. That was exceptional, man. That was insane.
Taking nothing away from Terence Crawford, Deontay Wilder said, and I quoted something in the lines of that he didn't look great, and he's talking about Errol Spence Jr. here. He said he doesn't feel like that he hydrated very well. Did you see that in Errol Spence 1 and 2? Is this rematch going to be different at 154 if it happens?
I don't know if there is a rematch, because I don't think it warrants a rematch, because it was so one-sided, you know. And I think Errol Spence may have activated a rematch because there was a rematch clause in it, but I just don't think it. I just think it was such a dominant performance by Crawford. You know, Crawford even said, yeah, listen, if we do the rematch, we can do it up at 154. Well, I would like to see Crawford go and create more history. He's a two-weight undisputed world champion now, first male to ever do that. And I'd like to see him create history and go and challenge Jamal Charlo for the undisputed title and become a freeweight undisputed world champion, because I believe he can do that. And I think that should really be the next move. Like, because I just don't think that warrants a rematch because it was so dominant. Yeah, I heard Deontay Wilder saying, yeah, he looked drained at the weight, and that could possibly be true because he is big at welterweight, but we haven't seen anything before at that. I just think it was the excellence of Crawford that made him look that average, you know?
Just going back to last week as well, we saw a Instagram story by Conor Benn releasing that he had been cleared by UCAD, his license. Well, he was suspended provisionally, but that was lifted, and he's able to fight. Obviously, pending that he has to go ahead and get a British board license. But
yeah.
I know we've spoken about it over the last 8-9 months in great detail. But just your instant reaction, obviously, to that as well.
Well, listen, we all want, look, there's not a hate campaign going on here for Conor Benn. People must understand that, for one, because we talked about it a lot on TalkSport, etc. All we wanted is the answers, and that is important. Do you know what I mean? We had a close relationship with Conor Benn, but, the sport is the sport, and we want it as clean as possible. So people must understand this is not a hate campaign. Where we're at right now is, I saw the interview that he had done, saying that they have now been cleared. They've lifted the suspension, and that was because of the ruling of so there was a UK anti-doping panel that overruled the UCAD situation. UCAD have now, because they've overruled UCAD have now got 21 days to appeal that, which I understand they will. So I think we've still got a long way to go here, right? So understand this. He's not been cleared. They've lifted the suspension. That's the difference here, and I think that's why when you get into the detail of all this, so good luck, and I hope that they can prove that, he's innocent and whatnot and move on with this. But right now, where we stand is, yes, the suspension has been lifted by the UK anti-doping panel, but UCAD now have got the opportunity to appeal that, which I understand they may well do. And also, it's down to the Boxing Board of Control now, because I think that they are looking into this as well. I think they're speaking to people to see where they stand with all this as well. So it's still very, very complicated. Do you know what I mean? There's still a lot to go there, but to go on there. But yeah, as it stands, the suspension is lifted, but he's not been cleared yet. He still has to clear stuff up. So let's see how it all unfolds,
Spence, again, the whole system seems flawed. It seems quite messy from the offset until present day. Like everyone has been reminding us, it's been going on for close enough to a year now.
Yeah.
Does the whole body, does the governing system need to change? Does the process need to change to ensure that something like this doesn't happen again in terms of process and application?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think that, we have to look into that. But what we are talking about here is that the suspension has been lifted on a technicality, whatever that was. Yeah, that's what the suspension is. And UCAD are very private in what they do, so they don't put anything out. They don't really, advertise what they're doing and whatnot. So, so he got cleared. The suspension was lifted on a technicality, but he's not been cleared yet, and he still has to go through that sort of process. Do you understand? So it's a very complicated situation. You really got to be up to date with it all. Which I try to do, but like I say, it is very complicated because certain parties keeping certain stuff back and whatnot. I know that Conor seems, that Conor and Eddie seem pleased that they feel like they're getting somewhere. But like I say, there's still a process to go through. I suppose he's got to apply for that license, whether that's British Boxing Board of Control, whether he does that over in America, or wherever he decides to go. Because I know he was angry with the Boxing Board and the way that it was. Is there something? Listen, that's possibly something that's going to come out on the outcome of this whole situation. That's probably a better way of putting it. So, let's just see how this process goes from now. I think there's still a long way to go on that, but I think that they seem to be getting somewhere with it. And let's see if we get some answers. I think we've got to hear from the Boxing Board of Control, Robert Smith, and what he's got to say on this whole situation. Let's see what UCAD now do, whether they appeal against this because of the UK anti-doping panel that overruled UCAD. That's where it's at right now. So yeah, that's where we're at with it all.
Well, we'll revert back to it once we have some more news.
Yeah, we'll see, and we'll see how it all goes. Let's just hope, like you say, it's been over a year now, and we don't seem to have really got anywhere, or Conor doesn't seem to have really got anywhere. So let's just hope it can get resolved, and whatever it is, and let's hope that the right outcome comes of it, and boxing wins more importantly, because like you say, it's put a dark cloud over boxing with this whole situation to the very casual fan that just says, what is going on here? This is a complete mess. Do you know what I mean? So let's just hope we get the right decisions and the right outcome comes.
Yeah. So, Spence, just a couple other quick topics. Anthony Joshua, someone you know very well, made some comments recently about Carl Froch. You spoke to Carl in
Yeah,
Talks. I watched that podcast that he did with Carl as well. He also made some comments about Rob McCracken, which everyone was surprised at, because they could understand the Carl Froch comments, because Carl has been saying a few things over the last kind of year or so. But Robert Garcia from Las Vegas, he made some comments about Anthony Joshua, saying that he wanted to leave the camp. He didn't want to be there. I'm sure you saw those comments.
Yeah, I did. I did.
What did you make of that?
Well, do you know what? It's like, Anthony Joshua. I know Anthony on a personal note. I know what he's like. I know he likes going around training with different trainers, taking information. He's like a sponge. He likes to absorb some stuff. If anything, he overthinks things. He overthinks too much. And that's why I think he's lacking the confidence in his own ability right now, because he's an overthinker. He's been struggling to find the right trainer. He's found Derek James now. He feels comfortable there. He said, actually, he's learned more now than he's learned in the last, 5, 6, 10 years of his career. He feels like he's really on the upward thing, which is good for him, because that's a confidence builder, and that's what he needs right now to reinvent himself, if you like. But I think it was harsh on the stuff that was said against Robert McCracken. I think that was harsh. Like, I think that Robert, you got to respect that Robert took him to Olympic gold medal, world silver medal, 2-time world champion. So he's obviously taught him something. I think that Anthony probably felt that his time had run out there and he wasn't learning anymore. He felt like he was getting a little bit stale and needed something to freshen him up, something to reinvent him, whatever. And that's why you got to respect him taking himself over to Dallas, and regrouping and doing it at this stage of his career, because he could have easily stayed here. But I think that maybe the comments were harsh on McCracken, and what he said about Anthony, Cole Froch as well, when he said, you've only got to look at Cole Froch's face to see that he didn't teach defence. Well, come on. I think that Rob McCracken's a great trainer. He's done great with the GB squad and whatnot. The Cobra is the Cobra. He's like an old throwback style, caveman style, and that's how he fought. Do you know what I mean? But that's not nothing to do with McCracken not implementing the techniques and the defence that the Cobra need. I think actually Cole was like a world silver medalist as an amateur, so he has got that technical ability. But it's just the way that he turned out and the way that he fought. Amateur boxing, professional boxing, two totally different games. It's like two different sports, because the amateur boxing is more technical and the professional boxing is more psychological, and you have to grit your teeth and get into it. And sometimes you got to overcome things like Jermaine Taylor, when he was losing for 11 rounds, and he slowly chipped away, didn't lose faith in himself, and then ended up winning it in a minute to go in the fight or whatever. That's what the Cobra does, because the psychological side plays a bigger part in the professional ranks. So, I think the comments were hard from both sides, from Joshua maybe, saying that. But I just feel that that's where he is, and, he's entitled to his opinion. Everyone's got one. He said that. And so I didn't read too much into it. Cole didn't take it personally, I don't think either. He was having a little bit of a laugh about it as well. So, yeah, it is what it is. But maybe a bit harsh on Rob McCracken, because he's a great trainer.
Also, Roy Jones Jr. Did an interview, I can't remember who it was with, where he said that he was no longer training Chris Eubank Jr. Chris has been with a lot of trainers over the years. He goes into probably the biggest fight of his career, in terms of, a lot of people will say, well, where does Chris go from here if he loses that rematch? But this whole, there were talks about David Hay helping him, and Chris Eubank Sr. made some comments on TalkSport regarding that. So do you know where Chris is at? We know he's in Las Vegas, but who's going to be training him, and what do you make of this?
Well, I know that he's in Vegas. I know that he's training hard. And Chris will know what's on the line here, like his career, basically. Fair play to him for activating that rematch and going in there, because it was a one-side dominant performance from Smith. And you just go, how does he overcome that? What does he do, to overcome that? I think there was lapses in concentration when he boxed Liam Smith the first time. There was too much of Roy Jones's style implemented into his own style. It didn't work. He was throwing shots, switching off when he come back. And what Liam Smith does and does so well is that when he's under pressure, when he's on the defense, his offense is great, because he comes back sharp and he comes back quick. And Eubank, obviously, Eubank and Roy Jones didn't work on that, and he threw some shots, switched off, got caught. Smith won't let you off. He's a world-class operator. So what does he do differently? He's got to stay switched on, man, and stick with a game plan. That's what he's got to do. But this is like climbing Everest, trying to overcome this, because it was such a one-sided fight the first time. Yeah, but so I respect Eubank for going into that rematch, because you just go, you know what, at this stage of your career, you need to win here. Like, you know what I mean? A loss is effectively, that could pull curtains on the career. So yeah, respect him for going into it, mate. But he seems, as he does always, he seems like he's oozing confidence, man. He's like, that shot was a shot sent from the boxing gods, and that won't happen again, etc. But that's his character, that's his persona. So let's see, man. Like, I think that Smith's glad that he's got the rematch, because he said he wants to go over old ground and he wants to do it again. It's a good fight, though. I don't think we get the same as the first one, by the way. I think it'll be a tougher fight for Smith this time than the first time. Still think that Smith wins, but I think that Eubank will present himself better in this fight. Definitely, because he'll know what he's going into. He'll know if he switches off, it's lights out.
Okay, Spence, always appreciate your time, and thank you for jumping on and giving me a few minutes of your time, and we'll hopefully catch up with you next week at Joshua White.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, mate. That's a great fight. Respect to Anthony Joshua as well, by the way, for taking this fight with Dillian White, because of the history between the two of them. You know, it's a high risk fight, man, and with what he had or what he's got in the pipeline with Deontay Wilder, etc., it's a high risk fight. So respect to him for that, and yeah, let's hope that he finds that confidence in his own ability, and we find that old Anthony Joshua, because that's the one we need back right now.
Spence Oliver, thank you for speaking to Boxing King Media.
Cheers, mate.